I'm going to actually fast forward to that slide. Excuse me for 1 minute. Okay.
I think we do have it on slide in the PowerPoint.
Yep, there we go. Para aquellos que están en Zoom, si ustedes necesitan traducción en español, por favor, que van a la interpretación y empujan ahí y selecciona si necesitan en español, Spanish. Thank you. So yeah, thank you everyone who's joining us today. My name is Melanie Beretti again, and I want to first acknowledge it has been a crazy couple of weeks for our entire community. And this meeting, we had some disconnects in communication. We would have liked to have postponed it given the weather that we've had this past week, but our mailing went out. So it was important for us to hold today's meeting because we had a mailing that went out, but we recognized that we did not do our best job at getting out to the community and getting notice out. So first of all, I just want to acknowledge and thank those of you who are here today. This is our first introductory meeting. We are really looking to hear from you, hear from your neighbors, your community. And as we go forward, we are going to work to make sure that we're hearing from you all directly. So thank you for being here on short notice and as a community for your patience with our noticing for this particular meeting. We're here today to talk about the Castroville Community Plan. The Castroville Community Plan, this is a planning document. We're going to talk a little more about it, but it's a document that was developed in 2007. And it was developed at a time when the state of California had redevelopment agencies. Redevelopment agencies were able to collect tax increment funding and leverage a lot of funding sources to help implement housing and economic development projects in communities. Since 2007, unfortunately, economic or redevelopment went away in the state of California. So we no longer have a county economic development, or excuse me, a county redevelopment department. In addition, the Castroville Community Plan from 2007, it included areas, a lot of growth areas that were planned within areas that are defined as the coastal zone. But unfortunately, the Coastal Commission was not able to certify this plan. So much of the vision of this plan has not been able to be implemented since 2007. And so we are undergoing this very important update to the community plan to help, we want to help right size this community plan so that it can spur housing development, it can spur economic development in the community, given the loss of redevelopment and given we don't have those coastal zone areas. So again, thank you everyone for being here. And we're joined by our team. So I'm with the County of Monterey. My colleague, Jamie Scott Guthrie, is the senior planner who is working on this Castroville Community Plan Update project. And Jamie is joining, it looks like she's joining our Zoom right now. And I'm not sure if she's there in person. And then Edgar Sanchez. Edgar Sanchez is fully bilingual. He's a great asset. He's an assistant planner with our team, and he's there in person with you all. So please reach out to him as well before you leave today. And this is going to be a joint presentation presented with our consultant team that we've hired, Kimley Horn and Associates. So today we're joined by, there in person, you're joined by Tad Stern, Brandy Childress, and Juan Hernandez, who will be a part of the consultant team who are working with us to update the Castroville Community Plan. With that, I would like to introduce Brandy Childress. She's going to come on and she is going to walk us through these next series of slides. Brandy, welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. You're such a fantastic stage setter. Thank you for that. So we just have a couple of meeting details we wanted to share with you before we get started. Like we said earlier, this is both an in-person meeting and online. This also means the meeting is being recorded, and we will have this meeting posted to the project website when it's all said and done. We do have interpreters here, which are both available in the room and online. And we will be taking questions later. We're going to be passing a microphone when it comes to your turn, when you have questions or comments that we want to record. And as Melanie mentioned earlier, we do have a way to receive interpretation services on Zoom. There is also going to be a fun polling exercise that we're going to enter into now. We're doing it both on Zoom and in person. Now the in-person, I think you might just have to raise your hands and be vulnerable with us and show us what your choice is. But online, there is absolutely a way to go to the screen. You'll see it at the bottom where it says polling, and that will be running in the background. So before we get started talking more at you, we wanted to learn more about you. Next slide. So we do want to know about you. What best describes your connection to Castroville? Do you live here? Live? Live. Do we work here? Anyone work here? Live and work. How about work or volunteer? Or volunteer, who might be a property owner that doesn't actually live in the area? No, you must, because you're here. Oh, you are. So you're out of the area. A little bit. Yes. Perfect. Okay. Work here / business here. Yes. Any students that come into Castroville? We're at a satellite campus as we speak. No students, maybe online. Or you shop or visit with family. And you might do all of the above, but it looks like many of you, about 60% online, are folks who live here. That's fantastic. You guys are invested in your community. All right, next question. This one's a little more dense. It's got more words to it, more information. You're going to hear a lot about all of these different topics tonight, but we want to know, out of the one most important topic, what is the most important to you out of all of these? What would you say? Housing? Is housing the most important topic? Got people online that are going to answer that question. Traffic, circulation. No? Public safety? A little bit? Is that the most important? It's at the top. Urban design, appearance. Historical preservation. Somebody own a historical building over there, maybe? Employment and economic development. Yes. Lots of votes for that one in the room. We have infrastructure, systems, and public facilities. That's your water, that's your sewer systems. That's important right now, especially what we're dealing with in the weather. And resource conservation, agriculture, land. Restoration. Okay, so most, I would say, we have public safety is a hot topic, housing, of course. A few votes online for other topics. Infrastructure, systems, and public facilities. That's also up there. All right. Last question, and then we'll get to it. We want you to stay informed. We're really glad that you came in person. We're glad that you're online with us. We want, as you signed in, we wanted to know how you want to stay informed. Did anybody come tonight because they got that flyer in the mail in their bill? Oh, we got a couple. Good. Okay. Email still a good way to communicate with people? Text? Is like text on your phones? Okay. Did anybody hear? We do newspaper, radio ads in upcoming meetings, so we'll make sure to do some more of those. Social media? Any social media followers here? A little bit? Okay. Email gets the win, I think, and mailers, flyers. So we'll continue to keep you informed in those ways. All right, so I'm going to pass the mic now to my friend Tad. I'm sorry. Brandy and Tad. He's going to get started with the presentation here. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Brandy and Melanie, and good evening, everybody. I'm Tad Stern. I'm with Kimley Horn. I'm going to be talking more about the planning issues and the plan update that's just starting with this meeting tonight. Just going to touch on the agenda. It's a very straightforward agenda tonight. We had our introductions and our poll questions. We're going to talk about the purpose of the plan update and the Nexus fee update that's going to occur with it. Some of the key areas of key issues and the study areas that we're going to be focused on when we're doing our work. And then the most important part is getting public input and having a little discussion, questions and answers, anything that we can answer for you, both here live and also online. We will do our best to answer everybody's questions. But really the purpose tonight is really to get public input and get your thoughts and feelings about the plan update that's going to occur. Next slide, please. So the major tasks and the steps in the process, this is to do a community plan. I'll go into that in a little bit, but it is a process that takes quite a bit of time. It starts with meaningful public engagement and community outreach, which is what we're starting with tonight. We're going to take care of a few technical updates, things like traffic and infrastructure studies to see what's going to be required moving forward in the planning process. Then we're going to actually draft the community plan, the update to that 2007 plan. That will go out for public review. So it'll be another opportunity for people to comment on that. And based on that plan, what we're going to be doing as a team is updating the development impact fees. And if you're not familiar with those, what that really means is when you're doing a plan, there's a lot of infrastructure improvements that need to get done, roadways, sewers, water lines, and those are generally in full or in part paid by new development. And so we're doing a study to see what those fees should look like based on the plan that's going to get drafted. Following that, there's required environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act. And only after we get through all of that, we'll get to plan approval, adoption, and going to hearings. Next slide. And that process I just laid out, this is just a graphic representation of what that looks like. So starting now in spring of 2023, we're doing technical updates, starting our public engagement process. In the summer, we'll be drafting the community plan, getting it out for public review. Our plan is to have the impact fee study done in the fall, and then later in the year, getting to environmental review, and then ultimately to planning approval, probably in the first part of 2024. So what is a community plan? Well, in Monterey County, it's a planning tool to help communities like Castroville. It's part of the larger countywide general plan, but the county is so large that the county went through a process of identifying areas that would benefit from having a smaller plan, places like Castroville and Baranda, Chular. It's the same type of plan. It goes over land uses in the community and goals and policies and sets forth the vision for the community. But in this case, the community plan will be specific and tailored to Castroville. It's intended to reflect what the objectives are and what the priorities are of Castroville, and may even tailor things like development and design standards that would be specific to here and compared to in other parts of the county. As Melanie had mentioned, the 2007 plan that was done included large areas of the coastal zone. And for those reasons that she explained, the coastal zone areas are difficult to implement. And so we're going to be looking at removing some of those areas from the plan update. All right, so what's the purpose of the community plan update? It's really, first and foremost, it's to stimulate housing and economic development by removing some of those barriers to development. And one of the ways to do that, the obvious way, is to remove the areas that are in the coastal zone, since we do have constraints for some of those large areas. And so what we're hoping to do with this plan update is to right size, is the term we've been using. We want to right size the plan so that it's more achievable. And if it's more achievable, it will be simpler to use, and it will also affect the impact fees that need to get paid. We're going to simplify the community plan. Right now, it's about 500 pages. It's a little bit too big. It doesn't need to be that big. So we're going to be thinning it out, and in conjunction with changing the boundaries of the plan. And like I said, we're going to complete the impact fee nexus study. That was one of the drivers of this effort, was to update those fees. The Board of Supervisors put on a stay or a stop to collecting impact fees here in Castroville in December, with the directive that county staff go back and update the fees. So that's what we're going to be doing with the plan. Next slide, please. All right, so what's going to go into the update, and really what's the scope? You know, what's the nuts and bolts of what we're going to do? We're going to update the plan boundaries, and we're going to show a graphic of that soon. We're going to revisit the housing needs and housing densities to see what works and what's viable for Castroville. Remember, there's already a plan. There's already a plan 2007. So this is not a complete redo of the plan, but we're going to see what was working and what wasn't working, and revisit some of those planning principles. And we're going to be revisiting housing and densities in conjunction with the county's housing element, which is also going on right now. We want those two efforts to be in sync between the plan and the housing element. We're going to confirm, or we're going to reconfirm, what the community's priorities are based on all the input that we get over the next several months. Update transportation information. You know, things have changed in the 15 years since the last plan was adopted. So we're going to be looking at transportation needs and also safety, things like bicycle and pedestrian improvements that are needed in certain parts of the community. Transportation needs, again, are going to be sized to what the plan ultimately is. Remember, the 2007 plan was much larger. There were a lot of infrastructure improvements. There were a lot of new roadways planned that aren't going to be needed any longer. Things like Artichoke Avenue and some other connections from Highway 1. And without those need for those big facilities, there's not a need to pay for those big facilities. So again, it's about right sizing the plan. That also goes for infrastructure needs. If we don't have as much development planned, then we don't need as many sewer lines and water lines, flood control facilities, and so forth. And like I said, we're going to scale the impact fees to match what those improvements ultimately are. Okay, next slide, please. All right, finally, some pictures. This helps a lot. All right, so what you're looking at now is the 2007 community plan boundary. And if you can see this on the screen, it's all the areas of blue are all in the coastal zone. And you see the area in red that's also in the blue. This was the commuter train station area, what we were calling the new industrial area. The north entrance, all these areas were in the coastal zone. And like we talked about before, having that much land in the coastal zone and trying to work with the Coastal Commission to get realistic development is proved challenging, and the Coastal Commission ultimately did not certify the county's plan. And also, I just wanted to point out too, down to the south, the Cypress residential area and Merritt Street, and those are areas of the plan that are not in the coastal zone. Next slide, please. Sure. Okay. So what this plan is showing, this is actually the land use plan of the existing 2007 plan. And so all the colors represent different land uses. All that purple is industrial. The yellows and the oranges and the browns are all residential. The red is mixed use. And so this is showing the land use pattern. So what that's telling us is there was a lot of area in it designated for residential use that was also in the coastal zone. So that represents a lot of housing units that probably were not going to get implemented over time. Next slide. The light yellow, that's low density residential. Okay, so what we're seeing here, this is what the potential boundary would look like once we take out those areas that are in the coastal zone. This is it's a more concise boundary. A lot of the land uses stay the same, that the industrial park is there. The Cypress residential area is there. It's basically just removing those large areas out of the coastal zone. This is more of a right size concept. Nothing's been decided yet about land uses or boundaries at this time. We're just at the beginning of getting our input from all of you and looking at the studies themselves. But this is the direction that it's going if we removed the coastal zone areas right now. All right, next slide, please. So the existing plan in 2007 was made up of a series of what were called opportunity areas. And these were really just areas of the plan to help us geographically distinguish one area from the next. But there are also areas where certain things were happening, along Merritt Street or out at the Cypress Residential. The 2007 plan had several more, but if we take out those coastal areas, what we're going to be looking at is the Merritt Street corridor, some infill sites, and the Cypress residential area. So we're taking out about half of our opportunity areas if this boundary is smaller, like we showed it. Next slide. I'm going to talk about those three opportunity areas that I just mentioned. So again, I wanted to point out, this is all from the 2007 plan. And everything that you see in red there is mixed use. And mixed use is a type of land use that combines either in one building uses like commercial with residential on top, or maybe there's two different uses on the same parcel. But the idea is that you're mixing different uses. You get a little bit more collaboration between the uses and a little bit dynamic community when you have people living where people are working. So it's a great idea, and it's been in planning for a long time. Next slide, please. But in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to revisit the mixed use along Merritt Street. And in the circles that you see there, starting on the left, there's some large parcels right across the street here off of Tembladero that don't, there's some apartments down there, but there's also some opportunities for other types of development potentially. But it's not necessarily the best place for mixed use where you really want that street frontage, store frontages, that type of thing. In the second circle, up at the top, we're also going to look at, well, how far should mixed use go off of Merritt Street? If you go too far back, you're not gaining that nice street frontage and that dynamic interaction you get from being on the more heavily traveled roadway. And then out at the 156 and Merritt Street interchange, there's existing commercial out there. It's very well-established commercial that may not be appropriate for mixed use going forward. We might look at just calling that commercial, or maybe just integrating some mixed use into that area. Like I said, none of the decisions have been made yet. We're starting to put our ideas onto paper right now, that's all. And next slide, please. So just a couple pictures. When you talk about these things, it's easier just to see a photograph. And this is our examples of mixed use development. On the left is a more urban architectural design, and 4 stories might be a little bit big for Castroville. On the right is a 3-story concept. These are just 2 very different architectural styles, but it's an example. These are storefronts and commercial uses down below, with apartments or townhomes over the top. And so those are the kinds of uses that even the existing plan was looking for, and moving forward, or was going to be allowed by the plan if the owners wish to pursue something like that. All right, next slide, please. Okay, infill areas. Again, this map is from 2007, and what it did is just it identified parcels that were in the plan that were either vacant or underutilized, and that just means that there was more potential on the land than was actually being built there or was on the parcel. And so this is a common thing that you do, is you identify those infill parcels that over time may intensify and support a little bit more intense development with the land uses that are underneath. And in this case, we circled 3 more areas where there might be more opportunities for infill and intensification down by Tembladero, or also at the other side of the community, along the fields, and also along the commercial area. So we're going to be doing a new inventory. We're going to be looking at satellite mapping and updating all that information that was collected in 2007. We'll have a new infill map in the coming weeks. Okay, next slide. Okay, so our last opportunity area that we have in the plan is the Cypress residential area, and this is down at the end of Blackie Road, down the Cypress neighborhood. And this graphic is directly from the 2007 plan again, and it was divided into 4 different areas, and the light yellow is the low density residential, and the orange is medium density, and the brownish color is a higher density that would support things like apartments. And I think this area, I don't remember the exact number, I think it was about 380 new units could be supported by this plan. So what we're going to be looking at here is, do we want to just keep this area the same? It's already in the existing plan. Or do we want to look at massaging some things that we could change densities between low and high density? We could look at floodplain constraints. I know that's on everybody's mind right now. The floodplain does curl around and go into that, around the backside of that area D. So like I said, we're not making any decisions here right now, but those are the kind of things we want to look at in the plan to see if anything makes sense to change, and if we hear from the community that it makes sense to change as well. All right, so that is the end of my presentation about the plan. And after Melanie concludes the presentation, we'll be here and we can talk more about it or answer any questions you have. So Melanie, you take over for community input.
Yeah, thank you, Ted. So again, this is our first meeting. This is our introduction of what we're doing, and we're really looking to you and to your community to help us make sure that we're taking all the steps, that we really hear from you and your neighbors and everyone who has an interest here in the community of Castroville. So we're going to have formal workshops, such as this workshop today. We are working with Supervisor Church, who is your new District 2 Supervisor's office. We're going to identify an advisory committee representing broad groups within your community to also help advise us on making sure that we are connecting and contacting with you and your neighbors. Other opportunities that are really key that we want to hear from you. We want to hear from everyone, or as many as we can in the community. We have a community survey active right now. We're going to get to that. So you all have information for where you can go and fill that survey out. We are going to actually be out in your community doing pop-up events. So places where you and your neighbors come and gather, or where there's a lot of high traffic. We want to be there. We want to have a table there. We want to have information to share with you and your neighbors, and be able to connect them to this community plan update, and our survey and other information. So we are really hearing from the community. There's also a number of formal public review periods and public review opportunities. So we will have a public review period for the draft community plan. So that's a period of time. We'll make that draft community plan available based on what we've heard and what we know. So we get that input on the plan. There will also be a publicly circulated environmental analysis of the community plan. So that's another opportunity for public review. And then there's public hearings. So everything that we're doing ultimately has to go to our Planning Commission and the Monterey County Board of Supervisors. These are all public hearings that are open to the public, and we really encourage direct community participation in those. We do our best to hear what you're telling us as staff and represent that in the draft plan and to our policymakers, but it really helps for them to hear directly from you as well. So for next steps, what you all can expect from us. So we are continuing, and this next month in particular, we're really going to be focused on collecting community input. We want to provide information to you and your neighbors, and we want to hear from you. We are then, in the next month or so, once we get through that and we hear from a substantial part of the community, we're going to draft that community plan update and make that available for public review. We're also going to update that impact fee nexus study. So I think right now those Castroville traffic impact fees are many tens of thousands of dollars in order to develop housing, for example, or any commercial development in the community, because the original 2007 plan assumed such a big area and a lot of infrastructure that just hasn't happened and isn't likely to happen for the reasons we've discussed. And so that nexus study, impact fee study, is really important to reduce those fees so they're not a barrier to people who want to build housing, who want to come and encourage businesses and new economic development in your community. And then again, we'll have our environmental review, and we are looking to complete the work in the fall of 2023. The timing will depend a little bit. We hope to get finalized by the end of this year. It may go into the new year. What's most important to us is that we take our time to make sure that we're hearing from you, the community, and we're doing a good job in reflecting what we're hearing. So we don't rush that process, but that we keep it moving forward, because we want new development to come into the community of Castroville. So right at this point in time, what's really critical to us, we want to hear your thoughts. So we have active a Castroville community survey. So everyone who's a part of this meeting right now, you can just take your phone and you can scan that QR code. It'll take you, you just tap it in your phone and it'll take you directly to the community survey. You can also visit our county website. We have a fairly user-friendly website. It's www.co.monterey.ca.us/Castroville CP.
La dirección es www.co.monterey.ca.us Castroville CP Update.
Bear with me. I'm just gonna mute our translation, which is happening in a side. Oh, excuse me. Apologies for the, okay, we're good. And then again, we really look to you as neighbors, as community members, community interested persons to help us get the word out to your community. Let us know what are the best times and places that we can go to you and to your community and have a table and help share this information with your neighbors. So attending those community pop-up events. And you can complete, you can either get the online version of the survey there and your neighbors can, or you can complete it in person. We also have some printed copies tonight in English and Spanish of the survey tonight. So we really want to thank you. And kind of the rest of the meeting, we want to look to you. We want to answer your questions. We want to hear from you. And we really want to encourage you to get involved. So tonight we have a paper sign up where you can sign in with email or with your cell phone number, mobile phone number, so that you can get notices as we push out notices of these public meetings. Our web page is here. I mentioned it previously. And then you can reach out either in English or in English and Spanish to our staff members who are our points on this project. So Jamie Scott Guthrie, and her contact information is here, and Edgar Sanchez, his contact information is on this slide. So Jamie and Edgar are available to you, and Edgar is fully bilingual. So if you speak Spanish, feel comfortable calling 783-7058 or emailing Edgar directly. If you have questions or comments. So with that, we come to the end of our formal presentation. And next, what we want to do is open up for community questions, community input. And what we will do is we will start in person. So if someone could come to the front of the room and help facilitate in person. So we'll start with those participants who are in person in the room in Castroville. And then once we've gotten through those questions and comments, we'll then move to our Zoom online participants. Thank you.
Do we have anyone that wants to ask a question? So I can hear you on the Zoom as well, if that's okay.
And for those of you on Zoom, just so you know, we can't necessarily see the entire room, but we have a microphone so we can walk around for participants in person so we can hear them and hear their questions or comments.
So my first thought on some of the redesign is not to leave out any industrial and try to fight for that. It's one thing to increase housing, but if there's nowhere for people to work, we become a sleepier town than we already are. We need to support the businesses that already exist on our main street, but we are an ag town and our industrial park is extremely important to us. There's a lot of viable businesses there. And if we expect more people to move here, we need more businesses to work for.
Anyone else with a question or comment?
Yeah, my name's Rich Kofelt. I pastor a church here in Castroville. I know nobody really would want to read 500 pages, but if they wanted to access the Castroville plan for a review, just to know what it currently looks like, how would they go about doing that?
Melanie,
Yeah.
do you want to answer that? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Let me take that. I'm going to do a brief share screen. So you can find that on our housing community development webpage. So I'm just going to do a brief shared screen to help you all navigate that page. Okay, so if you just Google search the County of Monterey and you get to our home landing page, and then you go under government and select the housing community development, that will bring you to this page here that you're looking at. So under planning services, if you go under land use regulations, right here, and then you just go down to the Castroville community plan is right here, and you just select and it gives you the plan itself and the figure of community areas. And if you have any questions or are struggling finding that, you can also email our team and we'll just give you those direct links as well.
Great. Are there any other comments or questions from people live in the audience?
Sí, me gustaría comentar que desgraciadamente con la escasez de vivienda que hay ahorita, estamos teniendo un problema en Castroville de que las rentas se están subiendo muchísimo, y pienso que la mayoría de las personas que viven aquí son trabajadores del campo, y desgraciadamente cuando se abrieron estos apartamentos de bajos ingresos, dicen que no calificas porque ganas mucho, pero ganas mucho nada más en cierta temporada. Después ya no tienes trabajo. Entonces,
Yes, my comment is regarding the shortage in housing. Unfortunately, rental prices have gone up a lot recently, and most of the residents in Castroville are farm workers. When these low-income housing apartments opened here, we were told that we didn't qualify because we made too much money. The thing is that we're only making that amount of money during part of the year. It's seasonal. And she was interrupted. And when one goes to apply for housing that is at the regular market price, we're told that we don't make enough money. So on one end, we make too much money for the low income housing and not enough money for the regular market. When this low-income housing was first opened, we were told that priority would be given to current Castroville residents. But the reality is that most people living in Castroville didn't qualify and stayed living where they were.
I'm Marilyn Vieira. I'm Chief of Staff to Supervisor Glenn Church. And to those of you who don't go online and navigate to the county website, we have a paper copy of the Castroville plan in our office. I'm sure there is more than one. I just haven't dug it up yet. So you can come to our office anytime between 8 and 5, Monday through Friday. And if you want to page through that, I welcome you to do so. I have not made it all the way through. I'm about 200 pages in, and I just have a goal every day, 50 pages. So. Okay, so thank you.
Are there any more in-person comments or questions?
¿Cómo pueden pensar en desarrollar negocios or casas con el tráfico que hay, no deberían de primero de pensar en ampliar los caminos. O lo que importa es cobrar impuestos a la propiedad y no el tráfico, que aquí por la 183 se pone la línea, pasas la Espinosa y viniendo de Watsonville peor y piensan hacer más negocios y piensan en casas.
How can we consider more housing and commercial developments or businesses without considering the traffic? Wouldn't we need to widen the roads? There is already so much traffic that goes all along the 183 all the way to Espinosa. Or is it that we're only thinking about increasing property taxes? I think we need to consider the impact on the traffic before adding businesses and houses.
Were you gonna, no? Anyone else in the room? Do we have anyone online that wants to ask a question?
So if you're online and you'd like to provide a comment or ask a question, you can put it in the chat or you can raise your hand. There is a raise hand button under reactions if you're online on the Zoom. And I don't think anyone's joined by phone. So, but if you happen to be by phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. Does anyone who's joined us by Zoom today have thoughts, comments, questions that you'd like to share? So I'm not seeing any hands. We'll just give it a couple more seconds.
We do have one more in the room, so we'll ask that while those online
Great.
may come up with questions.
Great, let's do that. Thank you.
Yo tengo una pregunta, no sé si podría haber como más apoyo para las personas que ahorita están pagando mucho de renta, como mi caso. La casa, según que para remodelarla, pero si yo quiero regresar, me quiere aumentar 1,500. Entonces, es el problema que ahorita está viendo. Están sacando a los que están pagando poca renta para seguir aumentando más la renta.
I would like to see more support. I want to ask if we can have more support. Those of us who are being impacted by the increase in rent. For example, the landlord where I'm at, she wants me to move out so that she can remodel. But then if she rents to me after the remodel, she wants to increase the rent by $1,500 a month. So what is happening right now is that people who are still paying a lower rent are being driven out so that they can continue increasing rents.
Thank you, everyone who's provided comments to now. Is there anyone else in the room that has any comments, questions? And again, anyone on the Zoom, if you would like to raise your hand, you can go to the reactions and raise your hand, or you can.
We do have one more in the room.
Wonderful, great, let's go there. Thank you.
Okay, yo tengo una pregunta acerca de un impuesto que nos hicieron a todos los propietarios de casas aquí en Castroville, aproximadamente hace unos entre 8 y 10 años. Nos aumentaron $100 en impuestos por propiedad para reparar o hacer un carril más, un carril en las Freeway 156 y en el Highway 1. Y no hemos mirado nada. ¿Qué pasó con ese dinero?
I have a question regarding a tax that homeowners in Castroville were charged 8 to 10 years ago. We were imposed $100 increase in taxes to pay for an extra lane on 183 and Highway 1. And I still haven't seen it. What happened to that money?
It doesn't look like we have anyone else in the room asking a question or wanting to provide comment.
Okay. Okay, thank you, everyone. So, one, I want to say for everyone who's provided comments or questions, we've heard you, and we will take that, take what we're hearing today into consideration. There are a couple of, just to generally respond to a couple of the comments or questions that were brought up. I guess I'll start with most recent. Regarding the tax that you're speaking to, the increase about 8 to 10 years ago, we will have to look into that. So if you can make certain to provide your contact information to our team there in person when you sign in, flagging that you asked that question, we'll make a point to follow up with you on that. We'll have to do our research. I don't have an answer for that today. I want to summarize what I heard and make sure that we're hearing you got everyone correctly. So I did hear a couple of comments expressing concerns about high rents compared to the income that most Castroville residents are earning, and concerns about your income during certain seasons being too high to qualify for low income, but too low to qualify for market rate. So I'm hearing that there's concern with rents and concerns with qualifying for inability to pay market, but not qualifying for the affordable housing. I also heard a couple of comments related to, one, making sure that we ensure whatever we bring in, that there's appropriate business and jobs for existing community members, as well as any new community members that might come in. I also heard support and comment making sure that we really take into account traffic and traffic impacts, that there is a lot of traffic coming through Castroville, and any new development in Castroville is just going to make that problem worse. And so making sure that we are considering traffic impacts as a part of this plan is important. And that will be a part of the consideration for this plan. And then based on my notes, I'm also just want to reiterate, we had an inquiry where you can access the Castroville Community Plan, the big 500-page plan that exists now, that's available on the county's website, or Marilyn Vieira, who's Chief of Staff with your District 2 County Supervisor, Supervisor Glenn Church. Their office is right there in downtown Castroville, and she does also have access to hard copies of that plan if you're interested. That is the summary that I have captured. So I want to take a minute and just offer it up to either our consultant team, our county staff, and participants, if there's anything that I may have missed in there. And with that, I am seeing a couple of comments in the chat that I want to make sure I capture as well. So in the chat on Zoom, I'm also hearing the importance of taking into consideration infrastructure. Again, reiterating, this is a commuter town and that traffic is heavy and is only going to get worse. Thinking about the concept that widening roads isn't the solution. That's a short-term solution, and that the real solution is looking at off-ramps and safe entrances and exits to the town, possibly an overpass to Highway 1. So thank you. We received that comment as well, and we will take that into account with our planning. So I am not seeing any raised hands for anyone on Zoom who maybe wants to chime in, clarify, or add. Is there anyone in the room that has their hand up and has anything that they would like to clarify or add or ask?
And Melanie, there's one more.
Wonderful, thank you.
So I have a question. What are we doing to attract investors and people to invest back in our communities and to beautify our communities? Do we have a plan in place to actually attract people to invest back into our communities versus pushing them away?
Sure. So the question of what are we doing to attract investors, to beautify, and to help make sure that investment's coming into the community. So I think that's a great question. That's a great point. A part of our job right now with updating this community plan, this is the plan. And this plan can also give us guidance on policies that we can do to help to make sure that that we can support that kind of investment and private development. It can also identify areas that may be priority for beautification. That's really important for us to hear where you want to see that and what you think that could look like. We can take that comment in and let this plan help be that guide. Ultimately, the county, we don't do direct development. We don't. The development we do is only on county roads. We don't build housing. We don't build highways and freeways. And so, so part of this conversation as well is to hear this, to let this community plan help guide and help communicate with other organizations, with private entities who do make that investment. And again, the one thing which has changed since the 2007, and I think has really been a challenge here in California, is formerly when we had redevelopment agencies, though those agencies were very specifically charged with collecting property taxes, with leveraging that tax increment for additional fund sourcing to help drive economic development, to help bring that investment, to help bring that beautification. So the tools that we have available now versus what we had 15 years ago are different and more limited. So we really look to hear as well ideas, creative ideas from the community.
Melanie, I think we have a follow-up question, but before I hand it back.
Please.
The bidding process, getting better attention, better services in general. That I think is very appealing. It just and it attracts the right people, I think, which betters our communities.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the first part of that comment? Those of us online weren't able to hear it very well. There was a little breakout in the first part of that comment.
What'd you say? Statement. Oh, what I was referring to was simplifying the permitting process.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so I would just follow up with a quick response to that. There's an economic development chapter of the plan that's going to be revised as well. And I think the redoing the fee structure for the impact fees is going to be a stimulus for investment back into the community. Because right now, when you're looking at the fee structure now, for what it takes to develop. And so again, it goes back to that right sizing equation of trying to get the fees in line with what's actually needed in the community in terms of infrastructure and services. Yep.
Okay, anyone else at this juncture? We know it's a lot of information. It's a big plan. It's a big effort for us, and it's certainly a big effort for you, community members, to wrap your minds around and start to provide input on. I'm not seeing anyone else online.
Melanie, this is a community member in the meeting.
Great.
I guess when I look at this whole project, I think our goal needs to be clearly laid out as far as what it means to create a community plan that helps us be a more healthy and vibrant community. Ultimately, we're trying to, we need to have some sort of vision in mind without just saying, hey, what about land use? What about business? What about housing? All these pieces are part of a holistic plan that affects real life people. So we want to have I think a community that is a fully functioning community where families and individuals are finding work, they're getting their children educated well, they're having recreational opportunities. All these things play together into sort of a synergy that we need to always keep in mind when we're reviewing land use questions. And the other thing is, I think we have to be careful when we are looking at land use, and that we don't just start placing residential projects into a community where the infrastructure can't support it, like traffic. School district is going to be a strategic player in this to tell us, hey, what can realistically the school handle with population? I think also that we've had tremendous difficulties in the past with crime activity, and with the arrangements that we have with the sheriff. Basically, we have maybe one or two designated deputies that might be passing through Castroville because they have to patrol all of North County area. So there's a lot of things that play in just to add another several thousand people to a community, because we need to get more low income or moderate priced income or whatever type of housing. We just need to make sure we're always looking at what's going to help us be a healthier, holistically vibrant community. So that's just my thoughts.
Thank you. I can't see, are there others there in person? If not, we have someone on the Zoom meeting here. Maybe I'll go to Diana Jimenez, who's here on our Zoom.
Melanie, we have one more.
Okay, let's take the in-person in the meeting first, and then Diana will come to you. Thank you.
La razón por la que yo vine a esta meeting es porque me preocupa que en Castroville no hay autoridad. En Castroville, cada quien se estaciona donde quiere, aparta la calle, pone el bote de la basura toda la semana, no lo mueve. Hay carros que tienen 10 años estacionados en una calle y no los mueven, y no hay una autoridad que les diga nada. Yo siento que Castroville es un pueblo abandonado. Tengo 50 años viviendo aquí. 50. Y Castroville no era así. Hace 50 años usted no podía pensar en salir a la calle con su carro con la sticker vencida. Ahorita puede tener 10 años o más y nadie le va a decir nada. Se puede estacionar atravesado en la banqueta y nadie le dice nada. Eso no se ve ni en los pueblos tercermundistas. Tercermundistas.
The reason that I came to this meeting tonight was because I wanted to mention that Castroville is a town that has no law enforcement presence. You can park wherever you want here. People will put their trash cans out to save their spot. No one says anything to them. There have been cars that are abandoned on the street for 10 years without being moved. No one says anything to them. They're not towed. Castroville is an abandoned town. I've lived here for 50 years and it wasn't like this before. Years ago, you wouldn't think of driving out into the street with expired tags. And now no one cares. This is something that you wouldn't see even in a third world country.
Thank you for your comments. And do know that for comments that we hear that might be related, for example, to our law enforcement partners in the county, the sheriff's office, we will share those comments as well with our partners at law enforcement as well. So with that, I'd like to go over to Diana Jimenez here on Zoom. Ms. Jimenez, please, it looks like you're unmuted.
Thank you for the opportunity. And I think I really appreciate the work you guys are doing to reach out to all sectors of our community. We're small, but we are pretty diverse. And those of us that have lived here for a long time, like myself, most of my life, I do see the good in my community. That's why I choose to live in Castroville. There's a lot of positive things that happen in our community. We have strong family ties. We're very caring community. If something happens to someone, we help each other out. I like that we're centrally located. So if we want to take off to Monterey or Santa Cruz, it's easy access. And then we're less than 3 miles to, to the ocean. So we can't walk there. We can't take our bikes there, but at least we're less than 3 miles from the ocean. But saying that, I agree with all the comments that were made. It does feel kind of like we have been neglected as a little community. And a lot of people already mentioned a lot of our needs, right? The infrastructure. So it's like overbuilding of apartments, and yet we lack the infrastructure, simple infrastructure like sidewalks, curb and gutter, enough parking, parks and recreation. We don't have a senior center. We don't have a pharmacy. Our bike and walking trails are limited. Like I said, we're disconnected because of all the freeways that we're surrounded by, or highways. And then of course we have the traffic, as people have said. And then our downtown has so much potential to really be like a San Juan Bautista. I mean, and an attraction for people not to just pass us by driving, from wherever they're going to Monterey or back, because we're just passed by. And honestly, if you look at the entrances in Castroville, it doesn't say stop and visit us. It just does probably avoid us. It's not inviting. And so I am happy to hear too that, there is plans to improve at least Merritt Street. I think that's still the plan. And I know that even in the 2007 plan or shortly thereafter, there was some criteria for even the businesses, like what color the building should be, what the structures should look like. So there was some consistency and cohesiveness to the downtown area. And it's not like, all the different colors that are being used, and there isn't a cohesive architecture plan for the downtown that also helps with the beautification. So again, and the housing, of course, the housing is an issue everywhere, but the solution isn't also to build 100 more apartments in Castroville when we're already over populated, and someone said we do not have the infrastructure to support that. So it has to be thoughtful, planned development to address all the multiple needs, and even some basic needs. Like I said, we don't even have a pharmacy in our little community. And then some of the businesses that we have, they're surviving except for Phil's. I was happy to see Phil's, and Phil seems to be the only restaurant right now that's really thriving. But we have other restaurants in town, right? And it just seems like people just pass us by. So how, some gentlemen mentioned about businesses and how are we going to help businesses? And that is important, right? It helps with the revitalization of our downtown area. And then I would also recommend that we don't build in areas that are prone to flooding, like near the Tembladera Slough, even though you can, because then we'll end up again with flooding and people having to evacuate. So that's part of thoughtful planning. Like, let's not make the same mistakes and build just because we can in areas that we know are prone to flooding. And I think I'll stop there. And well, no, I won't, because forever I've been advocating for an indoor swimming pool in Castroville at the community center, for it to be revitalized. So it's really thriving. I think the board members for the community, Castroville Community Center, they try their best, but we're made up of really all these little special districts that struggle to survive and really bring in more resources. Someone mentioned the school district. I mean, that is one of the biggest employers in our area, and they do have a stake in this as well, because they provide the education for our students, and so their input is vital. And again, I can't stress enough that we need basic things like a pharmacy, a true senior center, and then more parks and recreational opportunities for our youth. And I will stop there. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. I'm going to go. So I'm seeing we have another online, Cosme Padilla. We'll go to you next. I did want to just take a moment for those of you who have joined by Zoom. I want to flag for you before you hop off our call or off the Zoom, if you could please drop in the chat. Either you can do a private chat to myself or to everyone if you're comfortable. If you'd like to sign up to make sure that you get direct notifications of future meetings, of future public draft documents. If you can leave your contact information, name, email, and or mobile phone, if that's the best way, preferred way to get text messaging. You can leave that for us since there's not an online sign up sheet. So with that, I'm going to go over to Cosme Padilla. Looks like you're unmuted. You're welcome to share your thoughts. Thank you.
Yes, good evening. I've heard a lot of good things today, a lot of good recommendations, but just to bring everyone up to date, beautification of Castroville. We'll talk a lot about beautification of Castroville. I think we should also incorporate what Caltrans has planned for the Marist Street improvement. That's going to be quite an impact in Castroville. The sign, like the sign, there's an iconic sign that says Castroville, the artichoke center of the world. We're going to get a brand new sign. It's already been approved. Just a matter of time when it goes up. So that could be part of the update of the Castroville community plan, because we talked a lot about Mary Street. As most of us know, that's not a county road, that's a highway. So that's kind of difficult when you work with Caltrans. It's the ones that work with Caltrans, you know how difficult that can be. So there's a lot of good things that can happen in Castroville. Obviously, the school system is going to be impacted. Traffic's going to be impacted. The water, even though we've had a lot of water lately, let's not think that that's going to go away. You know, historically, we're going to be back in the drought sometime in the future. So there's a lot of things we have to think about on the update, but it definitely does need to be updated. I was involved with the 2007 Castroville plan. I have a book. Yeah, it's overwhelming. It's huge. But anyway, I'm glad we're updating it. It's good timing on that part, and especially the impact fees. So I look forward to future meetings.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that input. Okay. Is there anyone else either online? We're at 7:47, so we plan to go until 8 o'clock. I don't want to rush anyone, but also don't want to keep anyone longer than is fruitful for all of us. I don't see anyone else online. Is there anyone else in the room who has any comments or questions? Kind of final opportunity, final call for folks. All right, I'm hearing, I think we've come to a good stopping point for tonight's meeting. So with that, I just want to really extend a huge thank you to you community members who took the effort to be here in person, online. Please accept and convey to your community neighbors our apologies. We had a little disconnect with scheduling and noticing for this meeting. We'll do better in the future. There was a lot going on this week and we recognize that. But everything we hear from you, we take in. If you have any final thoughts, if you're on the Zoom, feel free to jot any final thoughts. We'll be rolling out, we will do a press release. We will try to do some direct pop-up events in the Castroville community to help drive folks to our survey right now so we can get a lot of survey responsiveness. So any ideas y'all have before you leave the room tonight or before you hop off Zoom, feel free to drop those ideas to our team and our consultants who are here. And with that, I just really thank you all. I wish you all are safe, stay dry, stay safe from the wind. And we look forward to continuing our conversation with you all and your neighbors. With that, thank you very much. I'm going to keep the Zoom link open, but we're going to officially close our meeting so folks can, you all can make your way back home to your families tonight. Thank you very much and have a good evening.